Hey, Eli here. Today I want to talk to you about taking panoramic portraits. So mainly I use this to bring in the mountains, sometimes to separate subjects from different things. But today we're trying to bring in the mountains. We've got my brother back here. Want to lock off my ISO, aperture, shutter, and white balance if possible, and then set a button to hold focus if you are using your shutter to focus. So I've got the 7200 on the R6II right now. We're going to go through a couple other cameras, but we're going to start out with this one. I'm going to go behind the camera so I can get some distance on him. Probably going to be around 100 millimeter with this image. So I want to take at least 3 images. So 1, 2, 3, sometimes 5 in a row, depending on what you're doing. Or I can do another row across the top if I really want to fill in an area. You do want to be careful with that. Make sure you get the whole area filled in. Try not to overlap your subject too much because sometimes Lightroom can, if they move, it'll bring an arm out, kind of funky. So always want to communicate too with your subjects when to hold still so they're ready for it. So sit back here. Got about 2 feet of snow we're climbing through. All right, so we got everything ready, everything locked off, and we're going to tell my brother we're at about 124 millimeter. So, all right, ready? Hold still on 3. 1, 2. Okay, we did 2 rows on that one. And so by taking one single image of your subjects, you're going to guarantee you get a shot and you're not wasting their time because sometimes these don't turn out. Next up, we're going to take the 56 millimeter 1.2. We're going to set it to 1.2 on the X-T5. I'm just going to take 5 images in a row. We could use 3 or 5. It doesn't really matter. But with this, we're going to center up our subject and then just sweep across. We'll start in the center, 1 image, hold our focus. Okay, ready? 1, 2. Awesome. Cool. All right, 5 images with that one. And then next up, we're going to do the GFX 100S with the 105 millimeter, and we're just going to sweep across as well. It's about an 85 millimeter equivalent, and so you can always do this with an 85 millimeter. It'll turn out great. All right, we get really low. All right, on 3. Ready? We're going to hold still. 1, 2, 3. And right there. Go. All right, so yeah, that's how you do it. We'll jump in the computer later when I get home, and it's cold. And we'll talk about how they stitch together and show you what I do with them after I've stitched them together. So, all right, we're good to go. Hey, I'm back in the studio today, and I want to show you in Lightroom how I create these panoramic portraits. So we've already taken the photos. I stitched them together just so you could see in the video. But today I want to show you how I do it in the computer and how I'll process them as well, down to how I'll crop them so they can be deliverable images. So yeah, let's jump in here. Oh, one thing I do want to note is I said it in the field outside, but it was cold, so I can't remember everything I said. Do want to make sure that you lock off your aperture and your white balance, your shutter, and your ISO. So it's going to be a lot easier in post if you do all that. Also, if you're using your shutter button to focus, which I do with most cameras that focus really well, the GFX 100S I don't. I use a back button. So if you do focus with your shutter, you want to make sure you set a button to lock off focus, and make sure it's a button you can feel really well, because if it's 14 degrees out and you got gloves on, you might slip and have to start over. So yeah, quick note there, but let's get in the computer and I'll show you those images that we took out in the field. All right, so we'll start off with the Canon R6, and that was the first camera I used with the 200 millimeter, and let's see what we ended up with here. End up shooting at 119 millimeter for this one, and so we have one photo that we can use that we can deliver to my brother, whoever your client is. One solid photo if it's a couple, and then we're going to fill in the area around it. So we saw all these images I took, and then we're going to click on the main photo. We're going to go edit in, and we're going to go to edit, photo merge. And we're going to do panorama. You can also do the keyboard shortcut Control M, or Control Shift M will do the last settings that you did for a panoramic. So here we have the option to fill edges if we want, and that'll try and fill in the edges here. Then we have perspective, cylindrical, and spherical. I start with perspective every time. The longer your lens, the better off you're going to be on perspective. you know, it's going to start to pull the edges. The more images you take in a row, the less it's going to distort on the edges. So it's rare that I'll use cylindrical or spherical. The only time I will is if I'm having issues and it can't connect the images. You can put on auto crop and it'll just crop in. So when you get it finished, it'll just have a crop on it or fill edges. So I'm not going to create these now because I've already done it and it's a little slow. So look at the ones I've done. This was autofill, so we can see the difference here with non-cropped and autofill. You can see how much it filled in here. So we get some extra image, which is great. It allows us to, you know, show more of the picture. But you do always want to check. Sorry, you can see on the left that I've already done some corrections. I got rid of the little posts and I got rid of the snow that my brother walked through. But yeah, you can see the extra up here on the top left that it gave us. So you always want to double check that, look in, see how it filled it in. Snow is easy, but if you get any bricks or anything, it's probably not going to work, or some crazy background. But yeah, so this is the image on the right that I would use out of these two. And just to show you, oops. So this one here. So I would go through, press Q, and we can eliminate this if we want. You know, it's optional. Use the heal tool. Come over here, or you can do the content aware tool here and get rid of it. And even if you want to go down to get rid of this, which I did, pull that out and enter. Looking good. So yeah, I always want to crop this in somewhat of a deliverable image. So I'll probably set this at a 4:6 ratio. So that way you can print most anything, you know, 20:30 or even larger since it's a panoramic. And then we always want to go in and double check that this image doesn't have any weird, I didn't overlap, I don't think, too much. I guess I did. I did overlap a lot on this one. Generally I won't with 85 or 100 mil. But we want to just double check that we don't have anything weird going on, like his hand, two hands, or a hand shifted over. So before you deliver this image. So yeah, so there's the Canon image. That's the longer lens. And then next we went to the X-T5 with the 56mm 1.2. So we can see here, we're at 1.2, 56mm. We've got one solid image that's deliverable, a little mountain in there. And then if we, you know, do control, I'll just do Control M on a Mac. See, that'll pop up. And then we have the option to fill edges and auto crop. So I've already done this one as well. See the difference between these two. Oops, there we go. So we've got something weird going up in the top middle, weird going on. So I probably would crop that out or just zoom in and try and correct it, or you know, Photoshop it or something. But we can go Q, do content aware, just see what happens. We can refresh it, see if it doesn't. Yep, there we go. That looks good enough for me. And then we will crop this down to probably a 16:9. We don't want anyone having to do like a custom print if possible. We want to be able to give them the option to print out of QuickTime if we can. So content aware there, looks pretty decent. And here, looks good to me. Yeah. And so with these, I'll always want to make sure that I have this turned off. Sometimes it'll carry over. It's rare, but it'll happen. It'll carry over the lens correction, and we don't want that. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll might lower my exposure just to give some natural looking vignette, and I'll just brush in a little bit of exposure in the middle so we get somewhat of a vignette, so it looks like this was a lens that I used and not just a stitch. That makes it look a little more natural, like it wasn't created in pieces. But we can see how much resolution is there. It's crazy. So you could print this pretty large. And if we go press E, go over here, we can see the actual resolution cropped is 15,000 by 8,400. So that's huge, huge image. Probably bigger than we can deliver through QuickTime. And then we're going to go up to the GFX, which is just 5 images. And I'm not going to go through the full tutorial on how to do it, but that one we get a lot more field of view. You can see, I mean, it's medium format, but just 5 images right there. Yeah, it's crazy. And then we'll compare these two real quick. You can see what I got out of the fill edges. So up here we might want to just, zoom in and check, but snow is pretty easy to fill, for the computer to create. All right, so let's pick this image. This is one I'd choose. Press R for a crop tool, and then we'll go up here to 16 by 9. And I might just deliver 2 of these, one without a 16 by 9 crop, just so they, if people still use Facebook, sometimes they want like a long banner image. So if I press Command, oh gosh, I don't even know what it's called, apostrophe next to Enter, I can create another image or virtual copy. Press R again, and then let's just reset the crop, bring it up a little. Cool, awesome. So this one here, I would kind of do the same thing, content aware, there, and there, and then just for fun, not really necessary, but he's standing on a fence post, which is under, gosh, over 2 feet of snow. So it's deep. He fell off a couple times. I cut it out, but pretty entertaining. But yeah, so there you can see that's what we showed you out in the field. And then I want to go through just a couple bonus ones for you guys here. So this is one from Boise. This is a Brenizer method. Ryan Brenizer dubbed this years ago. Basically, we took, he used 85 a lot. We did 100 millimeter at 1.4, which is essentially an 85 field of view perspective on a medium format. Stitched them together, and we got this image. And again, I put it in, I think I delivered this one in a 4:3 crop, right about there. So it's a printable image. They're not going to be bummed out when they have to crop it in print software. So right there. I mean, the resolution's out of control, but that's not really why we do this. We do this to get that perspective. So that's less landscape, more environmental. But here's one we ran into a couple that were previous clients of mine. Stitched this one together. This was autofill, and the Sawtooth Mountains popped out, which was great. And yeah, so you can see, aside from the resolution, the perspective you're getting is beautiful. You're bringing these mountains in, making them larger. And then this was a vertical panoramic, so across. And then this one here I did a horizontal. So 4:3, you can do that a little easier because it is, you can see here, it's almost a square. So, but yeah, so that's what that looks like right there, 4:3. And then this one I backed up a bit with the 100 millimeter, a little more mountains in there. So, and then here are just a couple more. Here's another just 3-image stitch of my brother, a little closer with the 100 millimeter. So you're just going to really, really blur that background. Sometimes you don't want to blur the background this much because, you want to see those mountains. But this is just an example. This is the 56 millimeter. Crop that down to a 4:3. And then, yep, right there. And then again, like with this one, I would probably bring the exposure down and then just kind of brush in a little bit of brightness just to kind of make it feel like it's like it's a true lens, not just a stitch. So, and then here's one we were just stopped off on the side of the road. And this is what we got out of that image. This was with the 85 Sigma on the GFX. So that's another thing we're gonna do. So we got to unlock the crop, and then bring it in this way, and then we can choose a ratio 4:3. So perfect. And just a little more there. And bring it down a little brush. I brush quite a bit, and I always try and do it at 0.3 so that I'm just barely adding a little bit, and I'll just add layers and layers. So we can see this resolution as it zooms in or renders. There we go. Pretty darn cool. So awesome. Well, cool. Hopefully that's helpful. There's a lot of potential here. No matter what camera you're using, whether APS-C, full frame, or medium format, you can do all kinds of stuff. So I've taken hundreds and hundreds of these over the years. Ever since I saw the Brenizer method, I was like, oh, that's fun, you know. So I was trying to create a lot of medium format looking images, but then I moved to the mountains, and you know, it made a lot more sense for me to just try and bring those mountains in with longer lenses. And so I generally will not go as tall, more so wide. So, but yeah, if that's helpful, let me know. I'm sure a lot of you have been doing this already, but for anyone who hasn't, this is how I do it. And yeah, hopefully it's helpful. Thanks for watching.